Hi, my name is Judith Graves, and this is actually a few days after the official virtual launch that we did. I had forgotten to hit record. Of course, I knew I was going to do that. So I'm just dropping in to say this is the virtual launch to celebrate the 150th anniversary of L.M. Montgomery's birth, as well as the 30th anniversary of Acorn Press, the major press on PEI, Prince Edward Island, and our recent release, the ANNEthology, which was a collection of 10 stories with 10 different authors from across Canada taking Anne in new directions. So without further ado, I'm going to drop back into what was happening on the official night of the launch. Here we go. We are here today to talk about the ANNEthology. So we had started off with me blathering on for a little bit and then diving into the introductory video that we did introducing all the authors. Here it goes. We are here today to talk about the ANNEthology, which is coming out this spring with Acorn Press, and we're really excited about it. I am the compiling editor, and I also have a story in the ANNEthology, and my Anne is a steampunk kind of adventure where she's an AIE unit, so she's seen some battlefield experience and has perhaps a hidden agenda.
I, of course, know what's happening since I am the story editor of the anthology. And I also had a complete blast working with the 10 writers in the anthology. I can't wait for you to meet their Annes, and I believe that you will wonder how you ever lived without them.
Hello, I'm Susie Maloney. I'm so excited to be a part of the ANNEthology with my story, Anne in the Bloody Book. I think you're really going to enjoy Anne's dark side.
Hi, I'm Mary Joyce. In my story, Where the Dark Goes, I asked the question, what if Green Gables was haunted? I hope you'll read the anthology to find out the answer.
Hi, my name is Matthew Dawkins, and I am so incredibly excited to be a part of the anthology. My Anne is a young Black Caribbean woman who experiences life in a very, very unique but important way. And I'm so excited for all of you to meet her.
Hi, I'm Hope Dalvey, and I'm a huge Anne of Green Gables fan. So I'm thrilled my story, In Search of Kindred Spirits, is included in the anthology. My Anne's search for kindred spirits begins in the scariest of places, junior high.
Hi, I'm here with Natasha Dean.
And I'm here with Paul Kocha.
And we both wrote Anne's. Tell me all about your Anne.
My Anne lives in a dystopian world where emotions are punished, families are outlawed, and love is not allowed. But she's my Anne, so she's going to burn this world to the ground with flames as red as her hair. Paul, who is your Anne?
Well, my Anne lives in a world of rainbows, and he's a fat, chubby boy who's looking for his family and his Matthew, but he finds his Marilla.
Hi, I'm Susan White. I'm thrilled to be a part of the anthology. In my story, Matthew insists on ripped jeans. Find out if a troubled teen pretending to be her beloved fictional character Anne Shirley can find healing and hope with her new foster family.
Hi, I'm Sherry Green, and I am super excited about the anthology. In my story, I send my Anne to the Yukon. I can't wait for you to meet her.
So that was our, as I'm using the screen, that was our wonderful intro video. Deirdre was the only one who was missing from that. Deirdre, did you want to do like a little intro like that for you? Oh, but you're muted. Sorry. Can you unmute? Yeah.
There. Yes, happy to. Oops. Oh, now I've just almost disappeared, people. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. My Anne was inspired by Greta Thunberg, who describes herself as an autistic climate change activist born at 335 parts per million. And that's parts per million CO2 per million molecules of oxygen, of air rather. Anyway, my Anne is mute, and she's perhaps permanently mute, or perhaps she will speak. When you read the story, you find out, perhaps.
Nice, thank you. All right, so I'm going to try and do this thing where I'm going to spotlight all of the authors who are presenting today. Let me see if it's going to work. In the meantime, I'm going to ask a question, and let's see. How many people present, and you can answer in the chat, have actually read Anne of Green Gables, the original? Make sure to add your answer in the chat, or wave, yeah. So slowly the authors were adding them here. Oh my goodness, there's so many names. You've read Anne of Green Gables many times, Katie said. That's awesome. Susan White, I want to add you to the spotlight. Who else am I missing? I'm missing Sherry. Dun, dun. Are you seeing us now? Yep, okay. And then do I have Hope? So, and then who am I missing? Paul, right? Paul. Okay. Oh my goodness, there's so many people here. That's great. Where are you from, everyone? Please add in the chat. Where are you from? Okay. And then Robin. Can I add Robin? So we have people from Toronto, Ontario. Oh, there's lots from Toronto, Nova Scotia. It's great.
Saw Winnipeg from in there somewhere.
Winnipeg?
Yeah.
Any other good ones? Maple Ridge. Where's Maple Ridge?
BC.
Ah, BC. Okay. I can swap. Can I replace Spotlight? Is she there? There she is. There's Robin Sutherland, our editor. Okay. And then how do I get rid of you? There. Oh, wow. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing? Everyone's names? No? Yes? Okay. Do you want to read a little bit from your Anne in the anthology? Sure. Sherry, here we go. I'm going to spotlight you. There you go.
Hi, everyone. My story is called Anne of the Silver Trail, and it's written in verse. So there's 2 points of view, and the poems vary. Most of them are Anne's point of view, and some are from the character named Maud, which is basically the Marilla character. So I'll read one from each point of view. Unexpected. This is Anne. I never expected a land locked in the frozen embrace of winter, a land far from sea and red sand and home, a land from which even the sun flees for months at a time. A land such as this would hold so much scope for imagination. And from Maud's point of view, advice. This land will kill you if you give it half a chance. Don't give it any sort of chance. There we go.
Excellent, thank you. Susan White said that she would also read, so I'm going to find her and spotlight her.
All right, I'm just going to read a part of a paragraph from my story, which is entitled Matthew Insists on Ripped Jeans. How had she forgotten a book she loved so much? A book her mother had also loved before her, even choosing to name her daughter Anne with an E. Anne flipped through the pages and closed the old book, recalling the last time she had held her own treasured copy. A crash, metal crunching, glass shattering, chaos and confusion, sadness and misery. How could she possibly read this book again? Maybe instead of reading Anne of Green Gables this time, she'd try to become the main character and pretend she was living Anne Shirley's life rather than her own.
Thank you. Paul said he would read, so I will add him next.
I guess share a screen with you, just for a second. My Anne story is called Carpetbaggers. You're looking for Matthew? The skinny guy asks. He's upstairs. Hurry up now. We open soon and I really shouldn't allow you in. We could end up in a lot of trouble. I tuck my bag against my side and rush after the skinny guy who doesn't wait for me to look back to see if I'm following. We pass through a door behind a second bar and then up a staircase that bends at a landing, then bends again and again as we climb up into the gables. The skinny guy knocks at the door. Marilla, he calls. He knocks once more when there's no answer. You decent, sis? I came for Matthew. Matthew Cuthbert, I say. You want Matthew? You get Marilla. Package deal.
Excellent. And then we have, I love the the clapping Natasha's doing there. We have Susie Maloney is going to read. I just have to find her. And here we go.
Now I'm sharing with Paul. Hi, so my Anne story is called Anne in the Bloody Book. I'm Susie Maloney. I'm just going to read the beginning because too much gets told later on. They could barely see the peddler behind the enormous cart coming up the road. When they did see her, Anne imagined her to be a witch. She was short and squat with rounded shoulders that gave the impression that she had a hump on her back, but her voice was kindly like an old grandmother's. Hello, girls, such pretty girls. Do you have some interest in ribbons and lace? I have some very pretty things, the peddler said. Diana oohed and clapped her hands. Yes, please, she said. Anne smiled indulgently and looked around for something more interesting that might be on the cart. It was piled high with all manner of things. A dozen or so kerosene lamps hung from the hooks the length of the cart. The pretty delicate items like ribbons, lace, and dress fabric were at the back, safe from the dusty roads, with a few slightly worn dresses, but nothing with a decent puffed sleeve. Empty milk cans, watering cans, and peach cans lined the middle of the cart, along with all kinds of bags and travel cases and trunks with worn edges from long years of duty before ending up on the peddler's cart. Anne poked her fingers through a tin bird cage that surely housed a dodo bird, so old was its paint and hinges. The cage was interesting enough, but she was more curious at what might lie underneath. When Anne moved the cage and dug further, she saw what she'd been looking for: books. A pile of them. Under the bird cage, a wool coat and a cigar box from Cuba with the initials carved in expertly at the top, LR. The book she buys is really, really dark and terrible.
Okay, so now if I do this, all right. Mare, did you want to read?
I can.
All right.
Let me grab my copy of my book and find my place for a minute. Okay, so I will just read the first bit of mine as well. If Mother Nature wept when it rained, tonight she must be in a rage. Mud splashed off my sneakers as we headed down the laneway, the thunder cracking against the sky and prompting me to pick up speed. Over an hour trudging through a drizzle that had steadily increased to a full-on tempest made me certain I would never want to live in the sea. The mermaids and water nymphs could keep their shining waters. I wanted only to be dry. Is that the place? Davy started to run ahead, but I grabbed the back of his shirt to keep him close. Hey, remember when I promised to keep you safe? I asked as he shot me an annoyed glance over his shoulder. That means I make sure the house is safe too, before you go bulldozing inside.
Nice, thank you. All right, next up we have Matthew. I'm going to add him.
Yes, I can go. So hi, I'm Matthew, and my story is called Anne from Nowhere in Particular. I came to in this room with handcuffs on my ankles. I scanned my environment, but it was bare and unfamiliar. No furniture, no people. The wooden beams of the ceiling and the walls were exposed and cobwebbed. Then hunger forced me to double over as my stomach grumbled. I came to the conclusion that I must have been asleep for a very long time and was now far from home. That idea sent me spiraling. I puked bile, and then the man came. This was not the missionary who came to our church and befriended me and my family. The missionary was older and always wore a suit. His appearance was why we accepted his generous donations to buy Christmas gifts for the younger children in our community and trusted his decisions on where we should hold church events. No one had questioned his interest in us or where the money had come from. Okay.
Thank you, Matthew. Hope, did you want to read? Are you there? Or can you unmute? Did it work?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so my story is In Search of Kindred Spirits, and it's a contemporary modern story set on PEI in junior high, and the scene is in the cafeteria. And I think fans of Anne of Green Gables they'll know what's coming. Okay. Blythe yanked one of my braids, causing me to turn in his direction. He then uttered the most insulting thing imaginable, and I quote, "Carrots, carrots." And no, he was not referring to today's cafeteria offering. It was my hair, the bane of my existence. My greatest wish, nay, my second greatest wish, is for my hair to be any color other than red. My greatest wish, of course, is for world peace. Obviously, Blythe hurt my feelings excruciatingly. Henceforth, he shall be called Wretched Boy in our shared existence. Naturally, there was little else to do but grab my lunch tray and hit Wretched Boy over the head with it.
Very nice. Okay, so removing the spotlight. Dun, dun. Are you ready? What themes were you keen to dig into in your version, in your story? What themes, or perhaps scenes or quotes or something from the original that you just felt you had to dig into, if you did dig into something from the original authors? Maybe wave, or so that I know who wants to speak.
You know what? I can start that off for sure.
Yep.
When I think of Anne, I think of at core, she is imagination and possibility. And that's just kind of what I wanted to explore. And I wanted to set it in a world where you are not allowed to imagine and you are not allowed any kind of possibilities. And anything emotional would be considered unlawful. And I just wanted to see what Anne would do in that kind of situation.
Nice. And she was a defender of books in yours, which is great. Yeah, books and love. Any other authors? Sherry, okay, I will get you, and then Susie next. Here we go.
Thanks. I mean, there are so many things that I love in the original Anne, but one of the ones that I really wanted to play with in my story was that longing for home and belonging, that unconditional love experience, where our weirdness is not only accepted, but seen as the sort of the wild and wonderful gift that it is. And I think, Anne is so desperate for that kind of belonging. And I think that's pretty universal. And like Anne, I think many of us have sort of that deep-seated fear of not quite deserving that kind of love. And so I wanted to play with that lie that we tell ourselves that maybe we're not worthy, and yet the longing nonetheless. So that's really what I wanted my Anne to explore.
Nice. I just wanted to ask, what made you choose the Yukon for your story?
I think one of the other things I really love about Anne is how she sees the world. And when I moved to the Yukon, I was a newlywed, 20 years old. And I just remember being captivated by the exquisite beauty, the vastness, the wildness. I landed at 6 hours north of Whitehorse in the middle of nowhere and totally captivated. It felt sacred, really. And it seemed to me that that was a place that Anne would have been completely enamored with. So I put her there.
Yeah, it was a shock when I read that one. That was neat. So then we have Susie next.
Hi. So I'm not wholesome. And so one of the things about Anne is she's very wholesome. But she's had this background in this life that, would certainly in some sorts of people cause a lot of rage and probably, some buried pain. And so I did want, what if Anne had a dark inside that, she sort of kept from everyone? And so that was really the number one thing that I started exploring when I got the assignment, when I became a part of the anthology. And I, just this idea of Anne's incredible imagination and how smart she is, that she would have an incredible ability to channel rage. And so that was my priority when I started writing that story.
Excellent. And what I loved about yours too was the whole peddler on the road, because that's such a great, it's an iconic scene, the peddler on the road, and then, oh my goodness, what she's peddling. It was really well done. Anyone else like to answer that question? Mare? Okay, I'm going to spotlight you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I good? Okay. Yeah, I want to kind of go off that as well. For me, some of the elements in my story I actually took from Anne of Avonlea, because that was the book that really made me fall in love with Anne's world. And it was particularly there are a couple of passages in that story where Anne and her friends, they talk about death. And Anne has kind of tears of sort of happiness or a sort of bittersweetness in imagining this. And she actually has a whole thought of how beautiful it would be to kind of go and spend the night with a ghost. Whereas, Diana is very creeped out by that. And that's something that I really love about Anne, because she does, you usually see her as being depicted as someone's really light and happy and wholesome, but she can see beauty in everything, including some of those things that other people find kind of spooky or strange or odd. So that's something I really wanted to play with in mine.
Love it. Anyone else?
This is so interesting to listen to the answers to all of you have answered this question. Good question. I wanted to experiment with a character who, unlike Anne, does not process the world through talking, through association. The character in my story doesn't or won't speak, can't or won't, and so there isn't the talkative Anne to show the reader what the character is thinking and how the character is interacting with other characters. So the exploration has to do with that aspect, and having my character have her essential dialogue in her whole life almost with a dead poet, Emily Dickinson.
Yeah, that was really neat to take Anne, who is so verbose, and then make her mute.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have a specific scene or something you wanted to dig into?
Sure. Let's just invite the troublemaker in. I'm not an Anne fan. I think I told you this, Judith, in our first email.
Yeah.
And in my defense, I had an awful professor in my 20s who introduced me to Anne, and he was bumming smokes off the girls at break and dirty fingernails. He was from Manchester with a thick accent. He would just talk about Anne, and I went, "You don't understand her, and you've killed her. Like, the whole class is dead." So I had to find something that resonated with me, and I thought, I didn't actually buy into Anne's wholesomeness. I thought she was always covering something up. I thought there was something darker and deeper there to explore. I thought there were body image issues. I thought there was a sense of knowing that what you were going into and the expectations others have of you, you can't possibly meet them. I always thought it was interesting that they thought they were getting a boy and they weren't getting a boy. So I played with those things because I knew that Anne is so beloved, I couldn't just crap on the character, for lack of a nicer way to say it. I wanted to do justice to people who really love her. So,
Yes.
Matthew, come join me and tell me, I want to know what inspired your Anne.
Okay, I'm going to get him in there. Here we go.
There you
I love
go.
that. Very, very smooth transition. I love that. Yeah, I think actually super similar notes. I think the transition is really apt in the sense that I hadn't heard of Anne either. Well, I mean, not either, but I hadn't heard of Anne, and so I didn't necessarily have the deepest relationship with her story. And it wasn't until I kind of dove in to, reading the book for the first time and researching what the story meant for everyone that I got to understand its true impact, I think, in the Canadian literary landscape. And as an immigrant, I thought participating in the anthology was really important for me because I'm contributing in such a unique way, given my perspective. And so I know for me, I wanted to think a lot about and trouble a lot the concept and the theme of home. I think that's something that Anne is really striving for in the beginning and something that immigrants also think about and deal with in a very unique way. And also, I think Caribbean peoples, we have a history and a legacy of displacement and immigration that continues today. And so those were the two kind of major things that I wanted to pull into the anthology, the idea of like, what does home look like for us? And what can it look like? And then also, what does it mean to be in somewhere new? And sometimes that can be dangerous and sometimes isn't as lovely as, what Anne of Green Gables got to experience, but sometimes it can be something a lot more hazardous, and dangerous. And so I wanted to bring that out. And yeah, that's what inspired my Anne.
And I got a sense of family from what you're reading. And I know that's a very important quality for Anne, is she is looking for a family.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was also really important for me as well. Because I just thought like it's both family and it's community, right? And how interlinked those things are. Because I think we have our chosen family and we have those that we're born into. And for Caribbean peoples especially, there's this a very, very strong idea and concept that even exists today that, it takes a village to raise a child. And for a lot of not only Caribbean folks, but people of color as a whole, a lot of people take that and abuse it. And so in I spoke about a little bit in the excerpt, the missionary kind of abused that perspective. No one is going to question why an adult leader figure would come in and take care of, a child. A lot of people do that. And that happens very frequently. Sometimes open communities and families experience people who might not be as kind-hearted as themselves, and abuse that. And so it's that duality, right, of like family and community, but also sometimes what we face as a result of that can sometimes be dangerous. And I'm trying to like speak in like very vaguely so that I don't give the story away. But
I
yeah,
mean, you can read the story. Buy the book, read the story.
There we go.
You don't buy it, get it from the library. How's
There
that for a
we
sales
go.
pitch, Judah?
Absolutely. I love it.
What other characters from the original story did people work in to their stories?
Natasha, let's go. I know you have an answer. I'm putting you on the spot.
So I used Matthew and Marilla, and Rachel, Diana, and of course Gilbert. I mean, come on, Gilbert had to be in there. So, but what I had fun with was that no one was really truly who they seemed to be. Maybe not. Thanks for putting me on the spot. I'm going to throw this to Susie then.
All right, Susie's coming up.
Oh, I did. I'm unmuted. I don't know why it's asking me to unmute myself. Yeah, I used Diana. Gilbert's in there for a split second because that's all that boy earned at that point. But I love this. I love the idea that, you know, Anne loves Diana, but, you know, there's a very obvious envy there. And without giving away too much of the story, Anne really gets into Diana and really starts to take on some of her characteristics. I also love that Anne always, you know, when I started the story, you know, of course it was going to be horror. I'm a horror writer. But I knew there was a couple of things that I absolutely was going to include, and it was going to be this desire for Anne's desire to have raven black hair, because I think that growing up, a young girl is constantly yearning to be something more, to be like the people that she admires. And, you know, you reach that age when you can start dyeing your hair, and man, do you get into it there for a while. And so I really wanted to have that moment. And if, you know, if I don't say so myself, I feel like I really ate it up there on that, on the page. She really gets that hair.
She certainly does. Sherry, could we just ask you for a second about you? So Deirdre has poetry segments in is it Dickinson's poems in her weaved within her story, but yours is in verse, completely in verse. Can you talk about what it was like to translate Anne into verse?
Yeah, you know, all my novels are, except for the very first one, are written in verse, and there's always so many reasons why I would choose verse in a story, but mostly it's because it makes me happy to write that way. But I found with Anne, it was easy to write her story that way because of how she sees the world. She sees it so poetically. She's, you know, she's just so lavish in her language. And so without making my own language choices too over the top, hopefully, I had fun trying to capture that same beauty, you know, her love of language and her love of the natural world. It just lent itself to poetry.
Nice. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Mare did have other characters in her story. Twins. Can you tell us about the twins?
Yeah, so again, I kind of mentioned that because the second book in the Anne series, Anne of Avonlea, is really where I fell in love with Anne and Anne's world. In that book, Anne and Marilla take on twins, and they are quite a handful. And Anne, of course, spends her entire life with twins. That's something that always follows her. So I have the twins included in my story, and Anne is in a very kind of precarious situation, taking care of them and kind of bringing them to a place that seems like it's the worst place to bring a couple of small children, but may end up leading to the best situation for them in the end.
Nice, thank you. Hope, I'm going to put you on the spot one more time because you had some secondary characters in yours, and it was Josie Pye shows up a little bit in yours, right?
Yeah. So the story takes place in junior high, and to me, that's the hardest place to find kindred spirits is in junior high. It's hard to be an individual, and I think a lot of kids feel like outsiders. So it's like the hardest time, I think, in any person's life is junior high. And so to me, Josie Pye was like the original mean girl. Like you know, the Mean Girls movies. So she's like the original Mean Girl. So she's a great villain in the story and creates problems for Anne. And the story also features her relationship with Gilbert, and it gets off to a rocky start. But unlike the book, the original book, it takes like 5 years for Anne to forgive Gilbert. And so, of course, I never liked that about the book. I thought that was way too long. So I made it much shorter in the story. And I just want the modern day Anne to find her kindred spirits. It's like one of the most important things in life, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Susan, would you like to talk about your story, because you took the scene of the puff sleeves and switched it up a bit?
Yeah. My story, I think, for one thing, imagination, and the fact that my Anne was using her imagination to as a coping mechanism. She was not happy with her current situation. She was really struggling. Her social worker said she had PTSD and all that sort of thing from the accident that happened and took her parents. But I really zeroed in on Rosemary and Clayton in my story, who Anne imagines are Marilla and Matthew. But they also had experienced loss as children and were very kind of thrown into the parenting situation. But I really built their connection, and then that sort of subtle connection where Matthew in the original book, is so nervous to go shopping and, goes into the store and buys things, and tries to buy things that are out of season and trying to get a dress with puff sleeves. And I wanted that same aspect when he realized kind of what the fashion was currently, which he wouldn't have been aware of until Anne came along. But also the connection that was a lasting connection that was going to give Anne permission to let some of her not grief go, but some of her present, coping and not being able to cope with her grief, trying to find a place to live with that. So that's why that three-way connection between Clayton, Rosemary, and Anne, which was important in my story.
Thank you. Did anyone write a theme song? Susie was telling us that she plays the ukulele, so she could have made a tune. No? Okay, so Robin is suggesting that I ask Natasha, and then maybe Natasha and I could talk about futuristic settings. So I'm going to try to spotlight Natasha, spotlight Natasha, and then I'm gonna, what happens if I do this? And then I don't know how to spotlight me. Let me see. Sorry, I'm not more familiar with all of the techie stuff, but we're doing the best we can.
There we go.
There we go. So Natasha, your story takes place in the far, far future, or does it?
Yeah, I know. It kind of feels like dystopian is now like current events / contemporary. But yeah, it takes place in a world where emotions are outlawed and there's no such thing as family. Everyone is sort of grown in these warehouses, and sort of you're sent to the schools, and there you go. But yeah, I was, as you were asking the questions, Judith, I was like, you haven't answered any. So I was really curious about why AI and why a steampunk Anne for you.
Right. Why AI? AI is kind of the catchphrase of the moment. I think it's good to play up on people's fears. I'm kind of like Susie that way. I do like to write a bit darker stuff. So AI, I personally think, is really scary. I love elements of it. I love it when it fixes my typing, if I'm, because I can't spell at all. But the thought of AI being able to write a book based on other people's works, and spew it out, so scary for me. So, and then there's the whole Terminator thing, you know, and Blade Runner was like a huge favorite film of mine. So I decided to write about an AI unit, a cyborg, Anne, who her wiring is all messed up. And she used to have battle experience, and she had a mission, and she used to, you know, slaughter some people. And she's on a road to redemption in Avonlea, except that the wiring she has is not quite working out, and at any minute she could snap. So that's kind of where I went. I think that Anne does have some, you know, there are themes of redemption and second chances in, you know, she's starting a new life, like with Matthew talking about immigrants coming in and people moving to new places. It is a lot of movement, and it's a lot of starting over and finding yourself. And so it could be in the future or the steampunk West kind of. But yours is completely futuristic. Whereas mine was like steampunky. Can you talk about a little bit about yours?
Yes, futuristic. You know, it's interesting because I was like, okay, this is going to be dystopian. It's going to be set in the future, and that's good enough. You know, like I think sometimes as writers, when we're trying to decide the stuff we want to like dive deep into versus the things that we're like, yeah, this outline will work. So I knew it was like I think it was like a couple hundred years after this giant war, and I just kind of wanted to see what would happen if we were living in a world where it was like logic, and everything, you know, the idea like, oh, if we take away like the nepotism and the entitlement of classes and families, right? The idea that family, you know, takes care of family, kind of like Matthew, I'm a fellow Caribbean kid, so I was feeling that. But, you know, if you take that out and then everybody is equal, you know, what happens there? But of course, I feel like for us as human beings, like we're just kind of hardwired to feel. I mean, that's what we come into the world doing, is feeling, and then we learn how to, you know, put words to those feelings and to verbalize those feelings, whether we're vocally verbalizing or we're using, you know, our hands or AI to verbalize those kinds of things. So in my Anne, yeah, she's in this world. She's already been to prison for reading poetry and writing poetry and falling in love. And this is sort of her like last chance. And she's done very good in being like a good little soldier. And her reward is that she's getting to catalog books from back in the day, you know, when we gave into our terrible, terrible emotions. And what she finds out is that they're less cataloging and just burning books. And of course, she's Anne. I mean, like when we think of Anne, Anne is books and stories, right? Anne is like all those things, the imagination that we're talking about. And so yeah, she has to step in and save the books, and bring in some unexpected allies into it.
Excellent, thanks. And speaking of books, Susie, I'm going to try and bring Susie in here also, if I can find her again, because I wanted to ask her about the Latin. Where are you, Susie? Let me find you.
I'm right here.
I know, I'm trying to find you in a sea of amazing people who have joined us. I'm okay now, it's alphabetical S, and I'm old, so I'm doing the whole thing. Susie, where are you?
I can see me.
Okay, you can see you. I'm going to remove me and try to get you in there. I'll get you, I'll find you. But if you could talk a little bit about, I got you, about the Latin in your story, because there's a book.
Yes. So I actually was part of an anthology last year, and the theme of that anthology was code, where things are written in code. And I've always considered, once when I was very, I hope nobody takes offense to this, once I was very young, teens, my friend who was Catholic took me to church with her. And a whole huge part of the sermon, whatever, mass, was in Latin. And I remember thinking, because I said I'm not wholesome, they could be saying anything. Who speaks Latin? Nobody in Stony Mountain, Manitoba could speak Latin, I'll tell you that. And so they could be saying anything. So I have this thing about, dead languages like Latin, where, you really don't know what you're reading. And so I had just recently written a story about that. And so I was still kind of enamored of the dead language. Even calling it a dead language is super fun. And so I knew I was going to include some dead language in there. And I believe I did. I'm always very, very careful to translate something as accurately as Dr. Google will do it. Dr. Google, as in they have a PhD in translation. And so whatever I did write in there, I don't remember, but it all makes complete sense. So
okay, good.
Go translate.
Okay, yeah, it was very cool to see in that story, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. It's my next book.
Yeah. All right, so I have another question that Robin is prompting me. She's so great. She's texting me these questions. Ask the authors if they have anything to say about the experience of writing an Anne story. Were there unexpected challenges, or did you make any unusual discoveries? Let me know. Yep, go ahead. If you start talking, then I can find you, I think, easier.
I vote Hope to answer that.
You want Hope to answer that?
Okay.
Okay.
Actually, I guess this is a little off topic, but I've never been part of an anthology before, and I got to meet, well, like, meet all the other authors, like through emails and just communicating through messages, and I thought that was really exciting, like exciting for me, because like writing is a very solitary life, so it was nice to make relationships with other authors and to read their stories too, because they're all so different. So that's the experience I take from this, is just kind of opens your mind to other possibilities and writing, and it's nice to make connections too. So.
Yes. And it's very cool to work with everybody. Now I'm riffing off of what you were talking about, and I'm just gonna spotlight Robin for a second. So Robin was the story editor for the anthology, Robin Sutherland, and she's the brains behind everything. I came up with the idea and pitched it to Acorn Press. I'm gonna share me too. Let's do that. And contacted the authors, and Natasha was absolutely amazing in helping me wrangle other people in. I literally name dropped her and said, I know Natasha Dean, and then weaseled my way in there with Susie and Paul, and then we found Matthew, and yeah, it was great. So Robin, what was it like working with, because you had to deal with 10 different Annes in 10 completely different situations?
Well, it was switching a lot of gears. I have a background in literature, so I loved talking story and character and theme with people who were so talented and so invested in exploring those elements. I refer to editing as, sausage grinding. So, which is kind of an unsavory practice, but I had a fantastic time with all of the writers. We dug through everything. We put things on their heads. We pulled apart sentences and really test drove the stories to make sure that all the elements did what we needed them to do. And I thought the talent was fierce across the board for this anthology. I was really proud to be part of it.
Yeah, and I was so happy to have you. And I know that the authors all really appreciated working with you. And I did on my story, although I didn't make mine as long as you wanted, but I threw it in there. Okay, so was there anything else you wanted to say, Robin, about working with the anthology? No? No, it was fun though, my friend. Oh, right. Someone is asking, Lori is asking, how did you decide how you would arrange the stories? That was a bit of a conundrum for us when we first started diving in. I had originally asked all the authors to tell me a little bit of what they were thinking of. Like once they committed to writing, I said, okay, give me a general idea. You know, is it going to be in space? Is it going to be the Wild West? Is it during the Black Plague? Like, what's it going to be like? And then, so we had a general idea of that. And then while they were working on their stories, we kind of came up with our little list. And then, then stuff got real when we got the stories. Did you find?
You know, as you may anticipate, if you haven't read the stories, these Anns go, they tread on unhallowed ground. And I think Tracy and I were mindful of our excitement about that we were pushing boundaries and we were making the collection really dynamic in terms of who an orphan is or what community is or home or family, friendships. And we love that. But I think we wanted to, when we organized the stories, we wanted to intersperse quieter moments with the real shock moments so that people would have a chance to breathe and regroup and settle into the collection.
Right. And I kind of personally love that we started with Susie's story because, man, we just throw everyone to the wolves right from the beginning with that story because it dives so deep into
Almost
madness.
literally.
Yes, almost literally. I'm going to just bring Susie on here. So let's see if we can do this. Because it has such impact and right from the beginning. And then the stories
And
kind of
meat is
level
such a
out.
theme.
Yeah, yeah. And the stories kind of like find their way in between and then, you know, and then we hit you with Matthew's story. Let's try to get everyone in here. And Matthew's story, so we go from you know, a possessed kind of Anne to a trafficked Anne. I'm going to find you, Matthew. It's going to happen. Here we go. And then Matthew's is really like, that was gut-wrenching when we first read it. So you go from guts to gut wrenching. Matthew, I know that you said that you hadn't read and you had no appreciation for Anne, but then you got into it and you know you pulled it together for this particular story. But what made you go with trafficking? What made you go there? How did you find that?
Oh wow. I'm not sure there's any one answer to that. But when I remember coming to that concept and idea, I do remember um, you know, Gen Z hair, so I'm on TikTok half the time. And I just remember scrolling and seeing so many stories that had gone untold about women of color who were trafficked. And I remember thinking about that in conversation with, as we were talking about, like what it means to be an orphan. And I was also thinking about home. And I think it was just all like very timely for me that those stories really hit home. And I thought it would just be super impactful for me to investigate and imagine what a trafficked Anne could look like and what does being an orphan and being a home for her look like. So I think, yeah, that's how it all came to be. And I will say too, I think when I was constructing this Anne and like rediscovering, not rediscovering, but discovering for the very first time her impact. I mean, s- it still happens today when, I mention to some of my friends that, oh my God, I'm a part of this anthology, and they're like, Anne of Green Gables. It's like this whole thing every single time. So, and I mean, for me, what became so apparent was her red hair. And I remember thinking while I was writing and constructing the story, I'm like, how am I going to incorporate red hair? How are we going to get there? Because I feel like if I don't, it will be like unexpected. Like I feel like that's a trait of Anne that people know and love, and I feel like at the end we kind of got there. So yeah, the whole process for me, it was a mix of like that kind of intentionality. Okay, there's some bits and pieces of Anne that I want to make sure I'm talking about and bringing to the audience, those pieces that people know and love, and recognize. And also, I think some of it was just like the timing as well for me, what was happening in my own life and what I was seeing and viewing and what was important to me to invest into the story.
Mm, thank you. Yeah, it really is it's a powerful one, that's for sure. Deirdre, can I just ask you now? I'm just willy-nilly asking people things. I'm going to make you a spotlight because I think you are really super knowledgeable about Ellen Montgomery and Anne. And would you talk a little bit about, like last night at our in-person launch, you mentioned how the expansiveness of this story, like how much it has impact from 1908, I think you said was the original date.
Yes, the first edition of Anne of Green Gables was published in 1908, and it's never gone out of print. It's been published in, I think it's 52 languages now. You look up how many copies, millions and millions of copies sold. Not that that should be a measure of the worth. The worth of the book is Montgomery's brilliance and her understanding of human nature and her understanding of childhood. She never lost touch with childhood and understanding, seeing things for the first time, seeing things and feeling things and for the first times. The subtleties in Anne of Green Gables and in other of the 21 novels and of Montgomery's novels are extraordinary. And that's why Montgomery's novels stand up after reading and rereading and rereading. I was at the conference, the Ellen Montgomery symposium this past weekend, starting Wednesday night. And it's really astounding how many new scholars are discovering Montgomery for the first time and finding depths of intertextuality and finding so many aspects of human psychology and in her work. As well, we have Montgomery's journals. She kept journals, which are now have been published. So we see the very sophisticated woman behind the so-called books for children. She was kept out of the Canadian canon for so many years because she was considered a writer of books for children. In fact, writer of books for girls. And she was too popular to be studied in the university. Now that's not so. There are many Montgomery scholars. There are scholars in Prince Edward Island from 16 countries around the world, here in person as well as online for this biennial symposium. But back to the complexity of the character of Anne, I would say that this collection is one of the many, many proofs. People, fandom and fan fiction are familiar to us, but how many people wanted to engage, all 10 of the people in this anthology engage in such diverse ways with the character of Anne, even if one, no matter how diverse, it's still Anne is the inspiration and has the depth of, there's the depth of the character that can sustain all of these interpretations and beyond. Anyway, I'm loving hearing the answers to this question, and I would like to hear more of just where people started and what they were investigating and where they and how they landed up in the story with the Anne that they landed up with.
Mm-hmm. Anyone want to take that? Yes, Susie, here we go.
One thing when I started out, I realized because obviously I went back to the books and I started reading. I wanted to, get a sense of the voice and how easy I was very concerned about writing and cliches and characterizing, and that's a fair enough fear, I think, because you're under a deadline and you obviously have tons of other projects, and no one ever sets out to just whip something off, but it's a danger, especially when you're writing about something that could be cliched or caricatured. And I was actually amazed at myself how tender she was to me, and how badly I wanted to capture her voice and to make her a real Anne within the confines of the story that I was telling. And I feel like we all did that so beautifully. This is, I've been in lots and lots and lots of anthologies, and this is bar none my favorite. Everybody's stories are so incredible. What a bunch of talent this is. And so again, I just off the agenda here, I'm just so happy to have been a part of this. And I feel like everybody really, really captured her, some aspect of her that was really real.
Thank you. Paul, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot right now in the spotlight. You have the only gay boy in the story. I thought actually that someone was going to submit something with Anne and Diana, but no one did. I was waiting for that to happen, but no one did. But can you talk about your character?
Yeah, well, the one reviewer called mine the gay obesan, and I was like, I love that. I want it on a t-shirt now. It's like gay obesan. I think I've made my mark. I'm now canonical. Yeah, I was thinking about what I do with my writing in general, and I tend to focus on body positivity. My YA tends to be very sex positive, which this story is not. So it is safe for people to read who don't want to read that. But if you do, I have other stuff. And I really, as I said, I was trying to figure out how I resonated. I was trying to figure out what pieces of Anne made sense to me, where I could connect in. And when I can connect into the character, then I can start writing a character. So I took it that way. And I appreciate what people are saying about Sherry. You were talking about the language and Anne's use of language. I thought that was really interesting because that was something that I picked up for my Anne, was that sense of fancy to the writing. And like in a fanciful way, not in the like, I'm so fancy, but my Anne is gay, so a little fancy. But I thought that's really interesting to have that internal monologue that's so different from the external monologue in the dialogue for me, that you can build up someone's interior world and you can show their hopes and dreams unfiltered and do it through the use of language. So I don't know if that's kind of what you were talking about in the adaptation of language, or I just took it off in a different direction.
Yeah, somewhat. That's a little bit different direction than I was thinking, but yeah, absolutely. And just hearing all these things like what you're saying and what Deirdre had said earlier too, I think so many of the people the readers that will come to this are people that already love Anne. They're the ones that are going to be drawn to the anthology for the most part. And I think for so many of us, those of us who really do love Anne, and unlike Paul, but had a background that
I love her better now, Sherry.
Yeah, but but it's interesting. I love that you coming from that background of learning to love Anne, and Matthew, like being introduced at this point in life to this character. But for so many of the readers, I think what we have, and this is me, a sense of don't mess with my Anne. And we have totally messed with Anne in one sense, but I think, through all the diversity of genre and character and situation, I think if the readers, I think you will find
the heartbeat of Anne right through everybody's story. No matter where we're coming from as authors and what we loved about her and what the readers hold dear about her, I think that heartbeat of Anne is still there in all of your stories. So yeah, I am so thrilled to get to be part of this with all of you.
So I just kind of threw us all up there because, oh, I'm missing Matthew. Then Robin and me, I can't fit us on the screen, Robin. Is that okay? I think that's okay. But it's really neat to see all of you like that on the screen. It's awesome. And I'm just going to say, if anyone who's watching us right now would like to ask a question, you can put it in the chat and then we will answer. If you have any questions, you can chuck them in the chat. I didn't organize a giveaway. I probably should have organized some kind of giveaway, but I'm going to do that right now. If you put a question in the chat in any of this stream, because I'll look through it later, you will be entered in a draw for a copy of the anthology. So yay! If you ask a question, though, you got to ask one. So hopefully people will respond to that. I did want to say about how you guys, I love that Paul and Matthew, the only boys in the bunch, but that you weren't familiar with Anne or didn't necessarily dig Anne at first. But living here on the island, it's very interesting. My husband teaches high school, and he asked his students that question, like, how many of you have read Anne of Green Gables? And it's almost like there's Anne fatigue on the island because Anne is everywhere here. However, Hope, you grew up and you were really into Anne, right?
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
you can't escape Anne. If you live on PEI, Anne's everywhere. Like you can't escape it at all. A few years ago, there was a play called Ankenstein, and it was a satire on Anne, because she's become like a monster almost because she's so popular, and it's a loving satire of Anne. So yeah, it's everywhere here.
That's hilarious. I am seeing some questions come in. So we have Sarah asked, what was the role of place in your story, similar to the Yukon angle? What was the role of place in stories? Anyone want to take that one? Yep, Deirdre?
The character, my Anne character, is a budding botanist. And so that she's come to live on a farm. She's been allowed to keep her herbarium, which she has kept from the time she was a very little. And so her excitement is that she's in a place where she can explore the flora and collect samples and identify different species. And so her thrill is in this farmstead that's across from a wood, and she knows by the lay of the land, because she's so tuned to the natural world, that there's a creek not far into the woods. And as soon as on the first night that she's at the new place, as soon as she senses that everyone in the house is asleep, she's going to sneak out and find mayflowers for Emily Dickinson, who's dead, of course, but who is her companion in life. The place was important in my story and is extraordinarily important in Montgomery's stories. All but 19 of her novel, all 19, then there was one posthumous, were set in Prince Edward Island. And she moved away when she got married, so she lived in Ontario, but the Prince Edward Island was in her every cell. And so the way she describes, you know this if you've read not just the Anne books, but Emily and beyond, that place matters and time of day matters, and sunrise and sunset and the species of trees and flowers. Anyway, it's so that, yes, in my story, I guess there's a big echo of what was important to Montgomery. And anyone who hasn't read Montgomery, if you read her just for her descriptions of nature, that's wonderful.
Thank you, Deirdre. I'm going to jump to another question just because now they're coming in. What was the timeline for this project? How long did we give you guys? I don't even remember. Robin,
I was going to.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm a real journaler, and I always read back in my journal like the year before, kind of not every day, but sporadically. And I think this time last year, I had just begun working on it. And not being a short story writer, it was a real challenge for me. And we did have some ebbs and flows, and Robin was very patient with me. But I think we had it was a generous amount of time to work on it, and then a generous amount of time for the editing. But I think it was around this time last year that we got started, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So wow, we're a year in the works, guys. That's crazy. Did any authors turn you down? Yes. Yes, damn it, they did. Well, no, they didn't. It was crickets happened. I guess that's no response. No news is not. It wasn't good news in this situation. But I tried Margaret Atwood and I tried Kelly Armstrong because I thought those would be really great. Imagine Margaret Atwood taking Anne for a spin would have been amazing, and Kelly Armstrong would have done something cool too. And then we got the 10 amazing authors that we have. So, yeah. Okay, next question. How many have you seen the stage play in Charlottetown? Yep, several of the East Coasters. I live here too, and I have not seen it yet, but I'm still I come from away. But so Linda says, sounds like a great read. Awesome. Now, have you thought of a companion book about Joe? Oh, for Little Women. Ha! Interesting. Yeah, there's all kinds you could do. Sylvia says, would you consider making the anthology not a yearly thing, but certainly an every few years thing? Perhaps, because there's so much room for new voices, I think, and taking Anne on new adventures, and that could be a good thing for the island too, because our population is so diverse right now, and we need that kind of representation. So I think that could be a really cool thing. If you ask for it, maybe Terry Lee will agree. She's the owner of Acorn Press. Are there any other famous characters you would love to reinvent? Anyone? Sherry, yeah.
This is one I've actually already done years ago. I got to contribute to an anthology for Alice in Wonderland, and just reimagining Alice was a blast. I put her in Woodstock.
That's awesome.
Reimaginings are very fun, so I'm sure there's many others that would be quite fun to play with.
Yeah. And Catherine asks, do you think readers need to have to read Anne of Green Gables before reading the anthology? Yeah, I would say a hard no. Yeah, for sure. You can start in any story and dive into it, and you don't really need the Anne references. However, the Anne references are the little nuggets, the little gems that the true fans will appreciate. Yeah. So we're at 8:18. Oh, there's still more questions. This is cool. From the iPad, F's iPad, here we go. Given the popularity of Anne worldwide, I'm wondering if there will be any translations. We are hopeful that there might be some translations of this anthology. I can't say anything at the moment, but hopefully yes. Do you guys have anything, that you would like to share or say before we close out?
Judith, could you say a few words about how you got the idea at first for those who maybe haven't? I know you talked about with the CBC, but could you talk about it here?
Yep. Let's see if I can add me. I can't add me. Okay. I'm just going to spotlight myself for a second, which feels really weird, but here I go. Okay. So Sherry mentioned that she wrote the for an Alice in Wonderland anthology, and I also was co-publisher of Leap Books, a press that was based out of Cold Lake, Alberta, where I was living, and New York, with Shannon Delaney, a U.S. author, and we came up with taking Alice from Alice in Wonderland on a new track. That was called Beware the Little White Rabbit. So that idea had also been in my mind as well. But I wrote my Anne short story for a contest for the Surrey International Writers Conference, and it won, which was great. And part of the deal was I paid for flight and hotel, but I got entrance to the conference, which was amazing. And that's where I met Sherry, which was really cool to meet her, and then to bring her into this anthology in the end was kind of a full circle story for me with that project. But after writing my Anne and seeing the response that it got, I knew that I wanted to try and wrangle other people in and join me and see where we could take Anne. And I think we've taken her in some really incredible places. So yeah, that was kind of the background for the origin of it. Anyone want to say anything else? No? Okay.
I just,
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on what Sherry said about the, don't mess with my Anne. And I think being such a traditionalist that this has been an amazing experience for me, because it is a timeless, Anne is a timeless character. And I think, we've given a real voice to that in this anthology. So I think I'm over the don't mess with my Anne thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And Susie?
I'm just, are books on shelves yet?
Books are on shelves in some stores. They're all over the island for sure, and they've been selling really well, which is fantastic. The official launch date, though, in order to hit the US market and try to get a Kirkus review and all of that kind of stuff, is September. So if you go online and try to order through Amazon, the release date is actually September. Thank you for asking this question. If you order from Nimbus Publishing or Acorn Press and you're from away, you can get it that way, or you can go to your local bookstore and request it, because it is in stock in Canadian warehouses and stuff. But the way Amazon works, the actual release date for those pre-orders and stuff will be September.
Get it any way you can, but go to a Books and Mortar if you can.
If you can, yeah. Robin, did you want to say anything to anybody? Miss Robin?
No, I thought this was a fantastic event tonight, and I really loved hearing what you had to say about your Annes. I know we talked a lot about them as they evolved through the editing process, but this was really insightful, and thanks, everyone.
Okay. I would say, there's one question. What I love, oh no, it's a statement. Sarah says, what I love about Anne is growing up with her and understanding the books differently at different stages of life. Ah, yes. And seeing how she evolves. Yes. That is a cool part of the series. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to Acorn Press, yes, for agreeing to publish this book, which was quite the undertaking. Thank you to Robin for helping me with the story editing and working with the authors. Thank you all, you fantastic writers who joined me on this journey. I love you all. And thank you to everyone who hung out with us tonight. I hope it was insightful, and I hope you go out and get your Anne. Go find your Anne, my friends. Bye. I'm going to close out now. Thank you so much. Oh, and for the giveaway, I will go through the questions, and I think through Eventbrite, I will have your email. So I'll email you for your mailing address, and I'll do that tomorrow, but I will choose randomly. I'll have my husband point at something, and I'll just pick someone. It'll all be good. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.